Hello, my fellow runners, my fellow weight lossers, my fellow keto people, whatever reason it is that you're here today, whether you are someone who's been subscribed with me for a while or maybe you're new, welcome to everybody. I'm excited to talk about my race. It's been about a week and a half now since the race. Yeah, I completed my very first half marathon. So let's get right into it. Make sure you sit down and grab a drink. This is the Minute Maid Strawberry Lemonade Zero Sugar. And this, you guys, has become like my new addiction. I kid you not. Like, I'm constantly going and buying this. Let's have a drink and get started. First off, I just want to show off my merch here. So I got myself a medal for the race, and on here it says, "The mountains are calling." And I got my shirt. Let's try to show it to you guys a little bit here. Got to put my glass down. So here's my shirt. So that was a shirt I got. So just getting right into it. First off, I had to wake up super early. As you guys know in my last video, if you watched that, if not, it's the video right before this one, and it's all about me talking about everything I did the week before the half marathon and how I prepared for it. I tried to go to sleep. It was so hard. My husband and I have been married for a long time, and so going to bed without him, because he was still at work at the time, it was kind of hard to get to sleep. And then even with getting up early, I think the day before I got up around like 5 o'clock in the morning, because I wanted to make sure that I was going to be plenty tired. I think it took me about, oh my goodness, I tossed and turned for what had to have been like a half an hour before I finally got to sleep. And then it seemed like every 2 to 3 hours something was waking me up. And then I would like toss and turn again for like another half an hour or so. And then I would go back to sleep. And then that just kept repeating annoyingly until my husband came to bed. After that, it was lights out completely. Like, I don't remember anything until my alarm went off at 3 a.m. And I was so tired. My nerves were feeling a lot better. By that point, I woke up and it was just stay awake mode. It wasn't so much focusing on the race. It wasn't so much focused on what I was doing. It was just gotta get up, gotta get this stuff done. Now, granted, part of why I got up earlier was because I wanted to do my hair. You know, I put my hair in 2 little like braided pigtails, and which actually got a lot of compliments on, so that was kind of nice. You know, I went through all that work and like people noticed, and so I thought that was really cool. And then, of course, my usual routine, right? Like, you know, brushing my teeth and, you know, things like that in the morning. I didn't have any coffee or anything like that. All I allowed myself was water. And then I finished getting my stuff ready. I made sure to have my electrolyte mixes ready to go. You know, I put my shoes on, things like that. And then I headed out. I don't know. It was kind of like in a blur. I felt like it went by so fast. I had planned out my time from when I left and drove to where the buses were at. And I felt like I had just gotten there, just got my goodie bag. I had just gotten my number on, which it was 101. That was my number. So I even still have the little pins on it, but I'm going to take those off because this is going to go up there with my other ones. So, but I wanted to wait until I filmed this video to do that. So, but my half marathon one. And of course, I will be writing on the back what race it is. I do that for all of mine. And right now I'm just setting them in there, but as soon as I collect enough of them, I'm going to turn it into a whole running poster. It's going to be really great. Anyways, I got times mixed up. I was thinking it was going to take a little bit longer for the buses to arrive. I thought I was going to have time to get to my parking spot, which I had to pay for. And then I was going to have a bit of time to get my number, to put that on, and then just sit in my truck and woo-saw a little bit. I brought my book. My plan was to just turn the light on and read my book for a little bit and kind of just, you know, soak in the moment. And I managed to get a few clips of me in the truck. Okay, you guys cannot see me. It is so, oh, hold on. There. Okay, it is precisely 4:30. The race starts at 6. They will be picking us up on buses in about a half an hour. So I'm gonna go find my bag, get my number, and then come back here and get everything pinned up. Currently I am tired and my head hurts. I'm gonna try to adjust my new visor. Maybe it's too tight. It has me a bit concerned, and I didn't want to take any medicine because I was tired too. Anyways, I'm gonna go get my number. The buses then took us up through the Canyonus Mountains. I don't want to say we went up the mountains, although we did climb really high in elevation. The finish line was at like 5,000 and something feet and in elevation. And the start line was up at like 8,725 elevation. So we climbed quite a bit, but it felt like we were just driving through the mountains, and it was so pretty. But like before we hit the mountains, the sun started coming up, and so there was just this incredible sunset that I got to watch for a little bit as we were riding on the buses, which, by the way, was pure torture. The seats in that bus were the most uncomfortable things I think I've ever sat on, you know, and me and a bunch of other people, we were just making jokes about how, you know, they were trying to get us ready for the pain that we would be experiencing in the half marathon because the seats were just so horrible. And it took us a good half an hour to drive to the start line. And by then everybody was getting antsy and we just wanted to get there by this point. And then we got off the buses. Okay, we're at the start line. Just waiting to start. So looks like we're going to be walking down a little bit and then running back up, looping, and then running down for a while. So I'm just trying to stay warm. I'm debating on taking my jacket off or not. I am freezing right now, but I know a couple miles in I'm going to get hot. So I don't know. We're in this parking lot because this is kind of like it's like a park area and people can go hiking on trails and it takes you to like other lakes and stuff like that. So people were lining up to use the bathroom before the race started, and a bunch of us were off in our own little areas, you know, getting warmed up and running around and just trying to get things, you know, warmed up, you know, get our muscles ready to go for this race. Like, I was kind of lost in this scenery. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful. Like, every time I go up there, the beauty of the place just blows my mind. I mean, we live in the high desert, right? And so having a chance to see this just diamond in a rough in a desert is just, you know, it was very beautiful. And the entire run was just absolutely gorgeous. And of course, the people in charge of the race, they came through and they took some pictures, and surprisingly enough, they got a couple good pictures of me, and I was happy with that because my family stayed home because, again, it was so early and I wasn't going to wake my kids up. So I went to the race by myself, but I did talk to my bestie, and I told her roughly about what time I would be crossing the finish line. And so she was able to be down there and wait for me and did some filming for me as I crossed the finish line. So I was so grateful for that. We started at the start line, and here's where it's interesting because it was just a half marathon race and it's privately organized. They didn't really have timers or anything that they counted on your race. You had to time it yourself on your own watches, and then you had to give them the times when you crossed the finish line. The whole time I was running the race, my watch was telling me something different than what they were giving, because what they did do is at different areas of the race. So like every 3 miles, they had an aid station, and then every single time a mile went by, they would have a little marker that they put on the side of the road with a little bit of spray paint, and it would have the number of how many miles that you had ran. They started us out not where we were warming up at, which I thought was interesting, but they took us down the road a little bit, and then they had us turn around, face back up where we had started at, where we were doing all of our warm-ups, because it's like a parking lot that goes in like a giant circle, right? And then it comes back down. That was a bit crazy starting out that way because it was a pretty steep hill that we started on. And although, yes, I'm used to hills and I'm used to running on hills, and so starting up on a uphill like that took a little bit of energy out of me. and I was feeling a little discouraged with the way everybody was just whooshing past me. And then we started going downhill, and I was just enjoying the moment, enjoying the views, absolutely gorgeous. I knew pretty quickly on, with all the people and everything there, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to film the entire race. My arm was going to be too tired, and it just wasn't going to happen. So my plan had been to, at that point, to check in with you guys every single mile and talk to you guys, let you guys know how I was doing, kind of check in. But that didn't totally work out the way that I was thinking it was going to work out either. First off, I completely missed the first mile. Okay, I've been running enough that I can kind of time out when roughly I'm at a mile. And I'm used to my watch, you know, it kind of vibrates a little bit when I would reach a new mile and let me know when I reached a new mile. But I didn't feel that. I was just so absorbed in everything that was going on around me. You know, when a race starts, when a race starts, there's so many people, so you're just trying to not trip somebody or get tripped yourself. People are passing you, you're passing people, right? You're on a road, and they didn't block off the road for the race, so we had to be conscious of that. They did have signs up to let traffic know that there was runners on the road, but we had to be very vigilant with where we were running and keeping an eye out for traffic and stuff. All I know is I remember, like, you know what, it's been a while, maybe I should check to see how far I've gone and see if it's time to check up with you guys. So I'm looking at my watch, and I was at almost 2.5 miles, and I was like, what? And of course, I'm going downhill, right? Like downhill. Again, I was just focusing on just one foot in front of the other. And I was trying to be very conscious of how I stepped because, you know, I had done some research about downhill racing and the importance of how you're stepping, ways to make it easier, right? I had looked up certain stretches to work the different muscles that you use when downhill running. So, you know, I was really just trying to focus on that. When I checked in again, I had noticed that my pace was like 9:04, and that is incredible for me. I've had a couple 9-minute miles, but they were like the higher end, right? So you're looking at like 9 minutes and 40 seconds or 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Holy cow, right? And so I was like so excited. And so I was just going with it. I was listening to my music. So I just kept chugging along and enjoying the views. And there was a few times that I'm holding my camera up and I'm getting shots of certain areas, and I'm just like, don't fall off the road off the cliff. Do not fall off of the cliff. And before you knew it, I had blew through my 5K distance, PB'd that baby. I was at 24 minutes. So I had done a 5K in 24 minutes, and I was still going. I was just powering through it, taking more shots of the scenery because it was incredibly gorgeous. My legs were starting to feel like jelly, and I was having muscles that were hurting that I had never had hurt before. Honestly, I thought that the downhill wasn't going to be as bad as it was. I am never going to underestimate a downhill race like ever again in my life. You think that it's going to be easier. I guess in a way it is because you do run faster. So downhill is definitely good if you're looking to get an easy PB, but they work different muscles. I haven't used those muscles to the extent of what I was doing in this 3,000 elevation drop. Halfway, guys. Halfway. I'm so tired. My 10K, also I had a PB. I'm trying to remember, but I think, oh man, I don't remember exactly what my time for my PB time was for my 10K. I'm wanting to say it was like 56 to 58 minutes, something like that. Or might have been even lower than that. I genuinely can't remember. So I'm just going to put it up here for you guys so you guys can have the exact time. But normally my 10K, when I would run it, it would take me about an hour and 11 minutes. And I just shredded that. Mile 7, I was starting to feel the tired. And luckily, it was shaded, so I didn't, there's plenty of trees. I didn't have to worry about the sun. I did end up taking my jacket off and stuffed it in the bag and gave it to the vehicle person that was going to be taking all the stuff down to the finish line. By this point, we were pretty spread out, so we weren't, grouped up anymore. So there would be me, and then, quite a few ways down, there would be another person and another person. And I caught some people and passed some people. And then, there was time there where we were passing each other and like back and forth about roughly 8 miles. The people that, that I was passing and then they were passing, we kind of spread out. They pretty much took off by this point, and they were gone. Bye, Felicia's, By that point, we also had a couple little uphills that we had to do, which that quick shift from using downhill muscles to using uphill muscles, and my pace slowed down quite a bit. I think I went from like a 9:04 to a 10:50 by that point, because we started getting a few more uphills. There was, though, I thought this was hilarious. One of the aid stations that we passed, about a 10-year-old girl, she was holding up, I think, the coolest sign I have ever in my life seen. And I have decided that baby is going on a shirt at some point. And basically it said, "Don't worry, if you pass out, I will stop your watch timer for you." And I was like, I looked at her, I was just like laughing. I was like, yes, I appreciate that. Thank you. Like, if I pass out, at least somebody's going to stop my workout timer. I don't know why, but I thought that was like the funniest thing. It made me forget that I was tired. And so then I went for like quite a little ways farther before, I started really feeling that tired again. It was funny. So then I just kept going and just kept running. I was listening to my music at about mile 10 and a half. I'm going to say about 10 and a half, maybe 11. We made it down through the mountains, and then we were down into like a little grassy valley area. So by this point, we only had about 2.5 miles left of the race. And this is where I really started noticing. At first, I really noticed it at mile 6, but it really confirmed down for me, because once we were out of the mountains and stuff, you could see the little mile markers that they were putting. And so when I passed their 10-mile marker, my watch, which I had started at the beginning of the race, was, and this is a new watch, and I've already clocked it. I know it's got the correct distance and the correct times and stuff. By the time I got down to mile 10, my watch was already telling me that I was at 10.7 miles. So I was over halfway almost into my 11th mile by the time I was crossing their 10-mile mark. So honestly, I think they misjudged their distances. I think when they had us start back and then go up and around, I think they didn't count for that in mileage. I think that they just did their mileage from the start line down and didn't count the going up and around part. In some points that did get a little discouraging, because, I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, yes, I'm almost to mile 11. I'm almost to mile 11. I can do this. And then I see a sign that says 10 miles, right? Like, I wanted to cry. I was like, no, not 10 miles. I went further than 10 miles. You don't know what you're talking about. And then by then I was in the sun again, and I was really feeling the tired. Luckily, my feet weren't hurting, and that was really what I was worried about in this whole thing. I feel like this entire training block for this half marathon, I feel like I had been fighting my feet hurting. It was either the area where I had injured before that would start hurting, or on my other foot, I would get heel pain or instep pain, or sometimes outer foot pain. It wasn't always the same everywhere. So my feet weren't hurting. I'm glad about that. I wasn't really feeling pain. I was just feeling intense tired. I felt like gravity was just pushing down on me. And like every time my foot went up, it was just, ugh. And so then I ran across a guy. He was in part of the race, and he was just sitting there in his truck encouraging people. And, there's as you go down the road, there's a turn. And when you hit that turn, you know that the race is almost over. You know, I conserved my energy a little bit. I kind of had an idea of exactly where the finish line was at, and I knew where I wanted to pick up my speed. So I was just like, you know, deep breathing. Because at this point, I had finished my half marathon. According to my watch, I was done. My half marathon, done. Okay. So I was still running. Try not to get discouraged by the fact that I had already finished my half marathon, but I was not finished with my half marathon. And that was, again, a little frustrating. I started seeing all of the flags, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to pick up my speed. So I had a song picked out for when I got close to the finish line that was going to pump me up and help me finish that race. And that was Defying Gravity by from Wicked. I like pulled my phone out, found that song, put it on, cranked it up in my ears, put my phone away, and then I just started, like, everything I had left in the tank, I put into running, at least to get down to the road. Now, when you get to the finish line, you kind of turn, you go off the road and into this grassy area where I then slowed down again, because I had done this 5K race last year, and the finish line for the 5K and the half marathon are exactly the same as in that little grassy area. And I remember last year I had hit a hole in the grass and I had kind of rolled my ankle. Luckily, it was my good ankle. Fortunately, it didn't do anything, and it didn't hurt or anything like that. And so I was prepared for this half marathon because I knew the finish line was going to be the same. So once I hit that grassy area, I slowed down.
We have 2 more half marathoners coming in. Number 65, Lonnie.
Good job.
Coming in for the half marathon, number 101.
And then I was done. By the time I crossed the finish line, it had been, I think it was like 13.8 or something like that. I will put up here exactly how many miles I actually ran according to my watch up here for you guys, so you guys can kind of see all of it, and it'll have my paces and stuff like that for you guys as well, so you guys can kind of see, you know, where I ran and where I fluctuated and things like that. But I had finished, and I never did get around to giving them my time on my watch. But later on, when they emailed the results to everybody, they had marked me down for my half marathon at like 2 hours and 16 minutes. Wasn't accurate in my opinion, because I ran longer. I ran almost 14 miles. 2 hours and 37 seconds, you guys. I was 37 seconds over from being just a straight 2-hour half marathon. Woo! Yes! Now, granted, most of this run was massively downhill. So I know that any other half marathon I do, I'm not going to get a time this fast. There's no way. Then I just hung out there for a little bit and just talked with my friend. We don't get a chance to see each other that much because our schedules just never fit. So it was really great getting to see her and getting to talk with her. I made sure to do my stretches and things like that. I learned that the downhill work that I had been doing during my training was in nowhere near close to being the correct preparation for this race. And I am going to be doing a whole separate video talking about just downhill racing, things that I would do differently, how to properly prepare for it. Now that I have run one, I have learned so much. And when I run it next year, because I would like to run it again next year, I am going to be so prepared for it this time, because that, like I said, it was brutal. And I wasn't the only one that felt it. When I was talking to my friend after the race, she was telling me that other people were asking the racers like, hey, how did it go? How did you enjoy it? And people were saying that was the worst run of their lives, because that downhill was it was killing everybody. So I wasn't the only one that was feeling it, but I was hurting in muscles that have never hurt in the entire year and a half now that I have been, in the year and like several months that I have been training to run now, and I tried my best to walk around. I didn't want to just like sit the whole time, right? So I was constantly stretching my muscles out. I was constantly walking around. But even then, every time I sat down, it didn't matter for how long. It could be 10, 15 minutes. Getting up was a chore. It got to the point where my husband, God love him, he had to look up a song on YouTube that, like you'd see in all the old Western movies when they're getting ready to have their little gunfights, right? And they're like walking out onto the street, and it's like wah wah wah, you know, and their spurs are clicking on the ground. It was like ching ching ching, and so it got to the point that every time I had to get up to do something, to go to the bathroom or take care of something for the kids or something else, my husband had that stupid song ready to go. And so every time I stood up, he's like, wah, wah, wah. The butthead. I mean, at least he was trying to, make it funny, but that little turd. But anyways, like it took, I think 4 days for me to start feeling like I could function, like the front of my legs were shredded. My hips were shredded. Oh man, it hurt so bad. Luckily, again, my feet didn't hurt, and that was what I had been initially worried about, but I wasn't feeling any pain in my feet. I had been worried about my back because of my herniated disc. Wasn't feeling any pain there. I did hit a bit of a after half marathon blues a little bit. There was a point at the race where I remember looking behind me and not seeing anybody. I didn't see anybody behind me. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, I am in last place. Even though I knew I wasn't, because there was people I remember seeing that I know for a fact that they hadn't passed me. So realistically, I knew I wasn't in last place, but I was starting to think that I was close to last place. And I got passed by a lady and her dog, right? Like I'm just going, oh man, this is insane, right? But like realistically, a dog beating somebody in a run is not as far-fetched as you think about it. Dogs are fast, definitely faster than us. And with the proper training, I mean, I've even proven it with my little Alaskan Klee Kai, who won a 5K race and beat bigger dogs, right? With the proper training and the proper work, dogs can kill it, right? So the race definitely put into perspective for me that although I ran the half marathon and I did it in 2 hours, which honestly, I keep trying to remind myself is a really, really good time, I still got a little discouraged because there was just so many people like faster and better than me. And I was just like, yeah, I'm slow. You just keep getting better. You keep working hard. You know that you're going to have some setbacks. You know that things are going to be different. And every new distance is going to challenge you in a different way. You should be proud of the fact that you ran a half marathon. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole half marathon experience. I rested for an entire week. Now I'm into a new week and I've picked up my training again. And it's been a little hard. My hips had stopped hurting towards the end of the week, but after my run today, I had to run 3 miles today. My hips had been hurting again a little bit. So anyways, I will be having a video coming out for you guys here really soon, and it's going to just all be talking about my recovery and the things that I did to help recover from this race that I did. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I can't believe it. I've officially ran a half marathon. You know what? A couple months ago, I didn't think that was going to happen. I was starting to think a half marathon I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I did it. And right now, even though I'm kind of feeling that way now about my marathon, like, I don't know about this, right? Again, I have to remind myself that that's how I felt about the half marathon after I finished my 5K. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to get to the half marathon distance, but I did. I got there. I did it. I ran it. 2 hours, 37 seconds. Heck yeah. So I know I can do a marathon. I just got to stick with my training and not skimp on too many days, because you're not going to be ready if you don't properly train. So with that all being said, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for sticking around. If you've been subscribed for a while, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for sticking with me through this journey. I am so proud of myself. I have never ran that far before, and I am so proud of myself. And I can't wait to run that distance again. I will see you guys in my next video.